And welcome back. As we reported earlier, the White House is working on a new sanctions package against Russia in the wake of Alexei Navalny's death. And while Navalny's death has received bipartisan condemnation from lawmakers on Capitol Hill, that condemnation may not translate to action. There remains no consensus on approving additional aid for Ukraine in its fight against Russia. And joining me now is the Democrat from New York and, of course, the ranking member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Congressman Gregory Meeks. Congressman, thank you so much for being here. We have so much to talk about. Let's start with Russia and how it looms over our domestic politics. We have the war in Ukraine and now this new Russia connection to the FBI informant who was a key aspect of the Biden impeachment inquiry. Do you right now view Russia as the greatest threat to the U.S. and our interests?
Russia is a huge threat. You know, we've got a number of threats, unfortunately. Russia's a huge threat, one of the greatest threats, but, you know, we've got to watch out for, you got North Korea, you got China, you got the various folks, but Russia is one of those head leaders, and what they're doing in Europe against Ukraine and the threat that they present is a big threat. And we know of their tampering into elections, both in the United States and other places. Those are problems. And so we've got to make sure that we stand up strong. That's why passing the supplemental is tremendously important, and we've got to do it next week.
You know, the White House is working on a sanctions package to hold Russia accountable for Navalny's death. I know that you spoke to his widow. What did she tell you, and what do you think should be in this sanctions package?
Well, number one, I got to tell you how brave a woman that she is. To be there at the time that the death of her husband was announced, to state that she was and made a statement publicly at that particular time and saying she would continue the work of her husband, that she will not let his living be in vain, to have met with me and other members of the congressional delegation, saying that her focus will be on the foundation and the focus will be on making sure that there's democracy in Russia. And that the criminal activities of Vladimir Putin is exposed, and that she wanted her concerned about making sure she gets her husband's body back. So she is a brave, focused woman who understands and will not allow the sacrifices that her husband made, sacrificed his life for a better democratic society in Russia, will not go in vain, and she will pick up his work.
Now, but to the sanctions, though, sir, there have already been a long line of sanctions that have been imposed upon Russia. It hasn't really seemed to change the course of the war or their activity in that region. What can be done in terms of sanctions to actually get them to start changing course and doing things differently?
There will be additional sanctions that will, of course, be devastating to the economy of Russia. Also warning those that are dealing with parts and other things that goes to help them continue the war. So there will be other sanctions that will be going and extended to other countries. But the most important thing that we can do to deter Russia is pass the supplemental. Give the Ukrainians what they need so that they can fight Russia and its aggression. And that's the most important thing that we need to do, and we need to do it immediately. I think that if we give them what they need, they will have the ability to beat back and stop Russia from continuing its assault.
All right, well, let's talk about your strategy there. I know that you were in Munich with Leader Jeffries. I know that he and you both heard several countries really press on you to get this Ukraine aid bill over the finish line. What is the minority leader's plan to get this over the finish line? Are you looking at a discharge petition? Are you talking to moderate Republicans about finding a way to partner up to get this legislation on the floor? I mean, what can be done to at least get a vote on this particular measure?
Well, first, let me just say all options are on the table. And there's several different options, some of which I'm not going to even talk about, but all options on our side are on the table. But what Leader Jeffries has been saying and ready and willing to do is to meet and to talk with our Republican allies so that we can get something done. It's clear that the Senate has passed a bipartisan bill that we should be able to vote on. And there are a number of Republicans, those that were on the trip with us, who have said that we will get it done. So one of the quickest ways to get it done is to join with Democrats to sign a motion of discharge so that we can go around the speaker. The first thing they should do is to be able to talk to their leadership and get Johnson to do it. I mean, that would be the first thing and the easiest thing to do. Get their leadership. They believe there's enough numbers there because if the vote comes on the floor, you get 300 votes. If Johnson refuses to do it because of him talking, we saw Johnson talking to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump does not want him to do it, then work with Democrats to go around the speaker to get it on the floor. And that simply means, for most folks never heard of a motion to discharge, if you have sufficient numbers, 218 people to sign on a motion to discharge, then the vote can go on the floor without the consent of the speaker.
Right.
So we should have that. There's a number of colleagues that I know that say that they are for Ukraine. Here is the time for them on the Republican side to really step up and step up quickly. And if you could either convince the speaker to put it on the floor or work with us and sign a motion to discharge so that we can get this bill on the floor immediately.
All right, let's turn to the campaign trail now, sir. And I want to talk about your colleague, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. She's urging Democrats in Michigan to vote against President Biden in the primary. It's in response. She wants to send a message to the White House about the way they're prosecuting the war with Israel against Gaza. What's your response to the Congresswoman?
She's flat out wrong. She's just absolutely flat out wrong. When you know what's going on and the confidence that you have, and she should have, and we all should have, in President Biden, knowing the hard job that he is currently doing to try to make a fundamental difference in the Middle East. And the alternative to that, an individual who was the first to come with a Muslim ban, and we know what he stands and what he represents to this country, to discourage people to come out to vote is something that is flat out wrong. I would never, ever. Too many people died for the right to vote. So to sit out voting is something that I would never recommend.
All right. Congressman Meeks, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. We'll see you back here in Washington next week. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.